Okay, thank you. So I'm Valerie Heavens, and I'm a clearing coach, and I also am a certified advanced yoga instructor, and I call myself an evolutionary growth facilitator as well, because the metaphysics of communication, this is at the core of the clearing practice that I do. Okay, so I want to talk about mind clearing and how it was developed. And a man by the name of Charles Berner did over 26,000 hours of research with one-on-one clients. And he basically was looking at what makes help helpful. And he studied all kinds of different helping techniques. And he found out that some people seem to have some kind of a knack, right? They seem to get really good results, and others don't, even though they're using the same technique. And he was trying to figure out what is this knack. So what he discovered is, I want to start with some definitions in order to build up to this. And the first one is what an individual is. And if you think about the fact that we're all one, you've heard this, right? And you've probably, many of you have experienced this formless one from which we all come, from which we all return. And if you think about the formless one cannot relate with itself, right? So therefore, many have been born, many have come into manifestation so that we can dance and play with each other and relate with each other. And because our whole purpose for being here is to relate, this is what we find most satisfying in life, is when we can make really deep, fulfilling, satisfying contact with each other. And what he found was that when he researched what people were really going after with everything they're doing in life, it's basically to relate with each other. It's to make contact. We're doing it all for each other. We're doing it to connect, right? And so what he found is that what a thought is, in fact, is the intention to relate. If you've ever had this experience of where you're this formless one, where there's nothing going on, what brings you out of it is a thought. And the thought is this intention to relate. So the individual has an intention to relate, and because of that, a thought is formed. When they make contact with another individual, and they get this thought across to the other individual so that there's understanding, and that is the purpose of communication, is in fact understanding. When this happens, when this thought gets communicated, the thought ceases to exist in a person's mind. It no longer has a reason for being there. So when you notice that you have all these thoughts that are just spontaneously going through your head and you just don't want them there, it's generally because you haven't had an intention to relate, and basically that thought was not received by a person. Perhaps you didn't deliver it. Maybe they resisted your communication. Maybe you didn't get it across very clearly because you went really indirect. And if you think about children, for example, they'll just repeat things over and over again. Have you noticed that? And they don't change how they say it. Mommy, mommy, I want you. Mommy, come here. You know, whatever they say. But as adults, we start to get a lot more strategic. We go indirect. We try to figure out different ways that we can actually connect with people. And a lot of times what we do is when we don't get our needs met, or when something happens, when we're young children, we make meaning out of our universe. Each of us is an individual, unique to ourselves, like a snowflake. And we've made meaning out of everything that goes on in our life. And so it's almost like we're our own little universe, right? And so for me to get a thought from my universe over to yours can be pretty tricky sometimes, so that you actually understand it. And that's why a lot of these thoughts and beliefs get stored in our mind. Now what Charles Berner found is that this knack that I was talking about is in fact contact. When we have a thought, we want to send it over here. In order for it to get received, the two individuals need to be in contact. And so what do I mean by contact? If you think about it, my attention is going out to you, and your attention is going out to me, and they're meeting each other, right? And so if your attention is somewhere else when I'm communicating, or if I'm communicating somewhere else and I'm not putting my attention on you, that thought's not going to get delivered. We're not going to succeed at that. And if you think about when you're talking on a phone, sometimes you'll say, "Are you still there?" Right? Well, what happened is somebody took their attention off of you while you're talking to them, right? And you felt it. You felt that break in contact. So this is the really critical piece of these thoughts getting communicated. And so they leave our mind. The mind is made up of incomplete communications. It's also made up of fixed attitudes and beliefs that we formulated, which are basically an attempt to communicate, which did not get communicated. So we made a decision about ourselves, life, or others based on that frustration that we had, like I'm not good enough, or nothing I do seems to matter in life, or you know, some of these less productive belief systems that we have within us were made at some point. And a lot of the incomplete communications might be caught in an emotional trauma. At a time when there's an emotional trauma, we, you know, there's something going on that's too intense for us to let in, so we hold our breath and we don't say what we want to say, right? It's still in the midst of that contraction within us. And so when we do emotional clearing, a lot of what we do is we get to the core of that communication and we get that delivered. And that's part of releasing that. The mind is made up of opposites. So if we have a belief, I'm not good enough, we might also have another one, I'm superior, I'm better than you. And we might have both of those. And generally, that's the way they work. So the key to clear the mind then is that there's two individuals working together in contact with each other. And the mind gets very strong and very dense because each of these beliefs that we have, as we continue to have more and more experiences and attract similar experiences in our life and see the world through this filter, our mind gets extremely dense. And so for us to clear our own mind gets kind of tricky. But if I've got 5 units of ability and you've got 5 units of ability, we now have 10 units of ability to work on your mind, to help you clear your mind, to help you bring to consciousness what's unconscious, and to help use a whole series of really specialized techniques to get through some of these issues. And as we increase understanding, we increase consciousness. So very quickly, some of the techniques, many techniques have been developed to clear different aspects of the mind. And so clearing past relationships so that they don't come into your current relationships. Clearing any kind of problem that you have. Clearing criticalness and guilt. Guilt is considered the glue of the mind. Attitudes and fixed states of being, emotional trauma, and a whole lot of other whatever issues you have that are creating your mind. There's been some really wise ones that have said that when we're embodied, we're creating our mind. When we drop our body, our mind creates our experience because our body is like an anchor. It slows everything down. So if you know people that are running around with guilt thinking that they're going to be really in big trouble, punished when they pass on, you really want to encourage them to get that cleared and shifted before they go on to their next life. That's not to try to be scary, but it is pretty scary, isn't it? Just very quickly, what I offer are complimentary discovery sessions so that you can figure out whether clearing is right for you. I have a number of clearing packages, and I do training groups. And the dyads group that I'm talking about doing with you in January, you'll get to work with other individuals on a series of specialized clearing techniques so that you can get through some of your mind in that. So go ahead and go to my website, get in touch with me. I really look forward to having an opportunity to work with you and speak with you more about this. Thank you. Thank you.
Could you describe also after, Valerie, after questions are answered, how, just to kind of connect it into other people's modalities, how you could complement other people's modalities within the group? So if you have a question, yes.
Yeah. What if somebody, like, you know, verbally attacks you, and you know, they're angry, and but you're holding the space, you're trying to hold the space for them, and you really, you know, aren't angry, but it's like it's still, you know, traumatizes you. Like, it's like you're not sending it back, but it's still traumatizing you. You know, like, what do you do?
Right, and so the energy is.
Like, what can you do? Because you can't run away, because then you wouldn't be holding the space, and you can't fight back, because then you'd be attacking and going into that same energy. So what can you do?
Well, the best thing to do is to breathe open and let it flow through you. Just accept the communication. This is a communication, so I'm just going to get it. Like, as a clearer, if you have anger to clear, I'll just receive that and it'll flow through me. If it gets stuck in me somewhere, it's because it's stimulated some unclear stuff within my own psyche that I need to clear. So
it can actually be helpful.
It can be helpful.
But trauma, I thought trauma was like not healthy, you know.
Well, no, it isn't healthy. But you said you're holding a space for a person. Does that mean you're inviting them to give it to you?
Well,
to give you their anger?
Wanting to heal a wanting to clear a communication block. So holding a space together to allow some communication to happen.
Right.
But you know, you're going out as communication, and they're going out as attack. You know?
Right.
And so you know, it's like it's not, you know.
Yeah, well, they're attacking you, and you're probably contracting in some way, because some of your own issues are getting triggered of times you've been attacked in the past.
Yeah.
And so you're not in a good situation to help that person clear their anger.
Yeah.
You'd be better to draw a boundary and say, I'm not available for this, until you get cleared to the point where you can actually receive anger and upset without it traumatizing you. Yeah. Thank you.
Chris?
You said something about units. Was that a metaphor, or is it actually a part of this technique?
Well, units are just a way of speaking about it, but the reality is that we do have greater and lesser degrees of ability to make contact with each other. When I talk about contact, I'm talking about the individual contacting the other individual through the mind, okay? So if someone's just talking to themselves within their own mind, within their own universe, that's not going to create a clearing situation. So I add my units of ability to yours, and we'll get through your mind. Okay? Yes?
So you said in the beginning that some people were just better at using their modalities and got better results. And this guy studied that betterness?
Yes.
What was it?
Well, what it is contact.
Oh,
so,
it is the contact.
So if you've got somebody lying on a couch and they're talking, and the person listening to them is going, yeah, I've heard this a lot, and I'm actually thinking about my next client, or I'm thinking about what I have to do for dinner tonight, or, you know, just let them talk. They're not going to get results, because that healer, that practitioner has to have their attention on that person. And that person who's speaking has to have their attention on the healer. If they're just talking into the air or talking within their own mind, our mind's made up of opposites, so we can be talking to ourselves. Gee, I don't know, I'm thinking of this, I'm thinking of that, and you'll see people, right? You'll see people, they're sitting across from you, and you want to say, yoo-hoo, I'm over here. And that's what we do in clearing. I go, yoo-hoo, get it over here, get that communication out of your universe over to me, get it over here. And I'll coach people to do that, because it's a common thing that happens.
Thank you.
So when it comes over to you as a healer, what do you kind of do with it? Because you don't want it then trapped in you, or is it just that it doesn't affect you because it's not personal to you?
Right. Actually, the thought will clear completely when it's received and understood from both you and me. Like when I leave, I don't walk away with all kinds of, I often don't even remember a lot of what went on unless I really try to. I take notes so that I can know how to work with you next time. If it gets caught in you, it's because it's stimulated some of your own issues. And it's kind of a good clue that you need to do some work there, because you don't want to have to keep holding out certain kinds of things from people, because your own.
My sense of working with someone is the ability to concentrate. I think it's what you're calling contact. But the healer's ability to concentrate, to really focus their energy and be with the other person, would be the stream of contact.
Right, as long as, in this case, for clearing thoughts and clearing the mind, the person has to also have their attention on you.
That's what I mean by focus on them and
Yeah, you
concentrate
both
on
have to
what they're saying. Oh, and the other person that's there to be healed has to be
focusing on you,
concentrated.
basically having their attention on you, rather than off somewhere else. Yeah.
So when there's two people trying to talk to each other like that, is that something that gets kind of traumatic when it comes to internet-based things? Because I do a lot of stuff on the internet. A lot of people putting blogs out thinking that they're going to be read, or putting videos out thinking they're going to be watched, or postings that they think people are going to look at, but they don't. So
Well,
no connection.
and you know, sometimes it is a one-way communication when you're putting that out, unless you're asking for feedback.
That can be kind of traumatic, right?
Well,
That's my problem.
it can get caught in your consciousness, thinking nobody's getting this, no one's understanding. I have to find other ways to communicate. It's your responsibility as a communicator to actually find ways to get that message across. We all have the free choice, and we don't have to receive others' communications. In conflict, what happens is that, you know, that cycle isn't completed, and both people are sending messages at the same time, and nobody's receiving them. And so, and we're trying harder and harder to get through, and so we're escalating our emotion, and we're escalating. And sometimes we want to punch each other out because we're trying to get through. And one person just has to stop sending and receive and understand and kind of take your turn, and it works better.
And let's make nice for Valerie. She made
Yes.
nice for Valerie.